So today is a special topic. It's a very technical topic, um, but we have to do it one day. So I thought may as well just do it now. Okay, get it over with quickly. But so in chapter 7, Mukta, you were not here last time, but we recorded it. Sanjay was there in the class. We talked about how
I was also there.
well the one before last when
One
we
Yeah,
before,
yeah, in
one
that.
before that.
Yeah, in
yeah,
that I was not there. Right.
that's okay, but we recorded it, so you got
Yeah,
everything
yeah, I listened to it also. Yeah.
right. So usme, and I think I repeated it also last time,
Mm-hmm.
but the but Krishna Bhagwan introduced Vedant, introduced the creation, right, and his nature in two ways. He said, "My nature is twofold." There's just another way of saying the same thing, Satyam, Mithya, and all that. He said, one nature is what I call my higher nature. He called it Para Prakriti. Higher nature matlab jo actually substance hai, which is Brahman. That's what I really am. Deep down, that's what I am. But then there is something called the lower nature, which is more like what I appear to be. That is the Srishti. That is this world.
Mm.
And he said, this nature, this lower nature of mine, which is this world, जो सृष्टि है, जो which appears to be, it comes and goes in the sense it manifests. When it manifests, it appears as this world which you see around you, including all the jivas and everything. When it unmanifests, when it folds back into itself, then it is just Maya, plain unmanifest Vaya. It's called Vyakta and Avyakta. Okay. व्यक्ति होता है ना, व्यक्ति का मतलब होता है ह्यूमन बीइंग. व्यक्ति इज समवन हु हैज मैनिफेस्टेड, जो आ गया है सामने. अव्यक्ता इज समथिंग विच इज अनमैनिफेस्ट, जो छुपा हुआ है, जो सामने नहीं है. सो हमने कहा था ना कि जो why do we say it appears to be so, is because all the things we see are just names and forms. In reality, what is there is Brahman, but all these things that we see around us, the objects that we see, they are name and form. And name and form keep changing. And they come, they go, they manifest, they unmanifest. Even when they are manifest, they change from one to the other. That keeps happening, and that is called Srishti. That is the whole world. So Vedanta is a very special theory compared to all other philosophies. Because all other philosophies say कि like Sankhya hai and all that, they say कि actually सृष्टि होती है. In other words, there is nothing. जब प्रलय होती है सब खत्म हो जाता है. And when the सृष्टि happens, when the new creation starts, then everything starts afresh. Everything comes up new. Vedanta says no. Vedanta is a believer in the law of conservation of mass and the law of conservation of energy. It says anything that is there cannot go away just like that. Nor can anything new come out of nothing. Things can transform from one to the other, apparently, but you can't create something out of nothing. So when we say Srishti in Vedant, we have to be very careful. Creation in Vedant doesn't mean that everything has gone to zero and then new things have come up. No. It just means everything has gone into unmanifest form. The real thing which is there, the real substance which is there, which is Brahman, is always there. Brahman has no change. ब्रह्मन की कभी सृष्टि नहीं होती, कभी प्रलय नहीं होती. वो तो हमेशा है. उसमें तो इट्स एक्चुअली आउटसाइड टाइम एंड स्पेस, सो देयर इज नो क्वेश्चन ऑफ चेंज. हमेशा है. What apparently comes and goes is the name and form, is the Maya. And that is what we call this world. That's what comes and goes. समझ आ रहा है मतलब? Am I,
Yes.
am I
Okay.
trying to?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Am I clear enough? So, so that is what Srishti means. That is what Pralay means. That means Pralay means when everything goes back into unmanifest form. वो प्रलय हो गया. And then it comes back up again. That is called Srishti. It's not that something new is created. So Vedanta has many prakriyas, and one of the prakriyas is, many of these are mentioned in the Gita also, but this one in particular is mentioned in the Gita. This is called the Srishti Prakriya, which is what I wanted to talk to you about today, which is in chapter 7. There are just two words there in chapter 7, my Ashtadha nature, like my eightfold nature, Prakriti. And we have to explain what that means. And to understand what it is indicating to is this Prakriya. So this will give us a chance to talk about some very basic concepts of Vedanta, which you will see again and again. Maya, the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, the five elements, tanmatra, all of these things. So these are a little technical. It'll take a while to understand these things, but once you understand them, then you'll have them in your head, and you can, whenever they are referred to, it'll become very clear to you. Okay? So what we are going to talk about is how does Ishwar, which is Krishna Bhagwan or Brahman plus Maya, let's assume right now that we are in the state of Pralay. What happens? So what it says is, again, Brahman is there constant. We are only talking about modification and change in the Maya part. Right? Brahman ko kuch nahi ho raha. So Maya is, in Pralay, Maya is avyakta. It is unmanifest. It's there, but there is no shape or form. The first thing that happens is, and first thing actually, before even that, you have to understand that Maya has what's called three gunas. It's called Trigunatmik Maya. It's got three gunas: Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Now, we call them gunas, and gunas otherwise means properties, but these are not really properties of Maya. These are aspects of Maya. And the way they describe it is, कभी कभी आपने सुना देखा होगा, जैसे छोटी लड़कियां होती हैं ना, वो गुत करती हैं. So they braid their hair, and they braid them in 3 strands. You can do it in 2, but normally they make 3 strands of hair, and then they fold one on the other, then they fold another, then another. You can't tell what is in the center, what is not in the center. They're all 3 folded, and they all look the same. That's an analogy for Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. If you think about those 3 braids as Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, meaning they're all combined together within everything, because they're part of Maya. So हर चीज में सत्व रजस तमस है. So Maya में सत्व रजस तमस है, and the sattva rajas tamas have aspects, and they are a little different. Sattva जो है, it's something which is, it's supposed to be the purest and the most refined aspect of Maya, most subtle, and it has a property of reflecting consciousness. So जब हम कहते हैं ना हमारा माइंड है, our mind is conscious. It's not really conscious. Our mind is reflecting consciousness of Atma. We went through this in the Jiva sessions and all. That the mind can do that because mind is pure sattva. It's made out of sattva. So sattva has that property of, it's so fine that it's almost like when we think about knowledge, when we think about consciousness, when we think about calmness, quietude, that's all sattva. That comes from sattva. Then there is rajas. Rajas is all about activity, action, doing. So when we say, typically they say Raja Maharaja जो होते हैं ना, वो बहुत राजसिक होते हैं. They are ambitious. They want to get things done. So everything in this world is in constant motion. If you see, that comes from Rajas, constant motion. And the third is Tamas. Tamas is sort of the opposite of Rajas. It's like dull, dark, gross, big, like kala, lazy. All these things are tamas. So when we say that something has a form, there's inertia in a form. अगर एक चीज form में है, that means वो ऐसी की वैसी है, नहीं तो form कैसे होगा? If everything is just moving, there'll be no form. It's like water is flowing, there's no form in water. So if this has a solid form, ये form है, that form aspect comes from tamas. The fact that something can be solid and stay like that, that part of it comes from tamas. The molecules inside it are moving, but the whole thing as a whole is in a form. So the three things are sattva, which is, you know, knowledge, gyan, consciousness, all the finer points, the purity. Rajas, which is all the action, activity, ambition, and tamas, which is lethargy or quiet or dullness or inertia. They say that राक्षस जो होते हैं वो तामसिक होते हैं, राजा होते हैं वो राजसिक होते हैं, और जो ब्राह्मण और ज्ञानी होते हैं वो सात्विक होते हैं. They've even given colors. They've said when you think about sattva, it's like white color. You think about rajas, it's like red color. Red is like excitement. You think about tamas, you can guess what color would
Black.
tamas be?
Black, black.
Black, exactly. Yes, exactly. Tamas is black color. Okay. So those are the aspects that Maya has within it. And everything that is formed from Maya, all this world, everything, will carry those things along with it, but in different proportions, depending upon what it is. Okay? So now, let's see how the Srishti starts. So, first thing that is formed after on creation is this space. It's called Akash, right? Space is also an object. We've been talking about this very often. I want to make sure मैं अपने notes भी साथ रखूं. It's a little technical. So space is the first thing that's formed. It's also called Akash. Because when pralay hota hai, even space is not there. It's not कि सारे का सारा universe है and all the objects and stars in the universe collapse and there is empty space. No. Space itself is an object. So that's an important thing to understand in Vedanta. That space itself is something that is formed. When there is pralay, there is not even space. That means what is there? There's nothing. There's non-duality. So the first thing that's formed is
That means space is also part of Maya.
Absolutely. And whenever they say space, they also mean time. Vedanta, even before Einstein equated space and time, Vedanta had done this thousands of years ago. They had already said space and time is the same. So when we say space in Vedanta, we mean space and time together as one block. I mean, this is remarkable. We didn't understand. खुद हमको ये समझने के लिए आइंस्टाइन पढ़ना पड़ा to understand this aspect of Vedanta. Okay. So that is the first thing. Then the second thing, so they say space, air, fire, water, earth. That's the progression. First is space. Then from space forms air. Now remember, even when the space is being formed, what is changing and what is being formed? It's Maya, name and form, which is changing. Maya from avyakta is becoming vyakta. So the change is all happening in Maya. Brahman is not changing. Brahman is the substance, the real substance, which is the basis of even the Maya. Maya can't even exist without Brahman. So Brahman is not changing. First, it was, you could say Brahman plus, I'm being, not very accurate, but it was Brahman plus Avyakta Maya. When it became space, it became the same Brahman plus space. The change has only happened in the name and form at the level of Avyakta Maya to Vyakta space, manifest space. Right? Maya Avyakta is based on Brahman, and Brahman is the Adhisthana, the foundation of that Maya. Space also, when it forms, same thing. What is space really? The substance of that space is still Brahman. The name and form is a little different. It certainly has a form. There is certainly an object, a space over there. This space then creates air. And air doesn't mean just hamara atmosphere. Air means everything that moves like air. So that's called Vayu. And I mean, even I don't know all the details. But it's more of a it's more a concept than something real. Remember, now we are just talking about subtle elements right now. These are not things that we can see. At this point, you remember I told you there is Brahman, there is the subtle elements, and then there is the gross elements. Subtle means sukshma, right? And gross means sthul. So our mind is and body is all, we have a subtle body and a gross body. The gross body is what we see. The subtle body is what we don't see. So we are now talking about the creation. We first start with subtle elements. They are called tan matra. So we are talking subtle space, not the space that you can feel around you. It's subtle space. Then it creates subtle vayu. Then that subtle vayu creates subtle agni, which is fire. The subtle agni creates subtle jal. And the subtle jal creates subtle prithvi. So space, air, fire, water, earth. And it doesn't matter if you don't get this all right now, but these are indications. Prithvi doesn't mean just this earth. Prithvi means anything which has the form like an earth, which is solid. Jal is anything which has got a liquid form. Vayu is anything which has a gas form. Space and time is that in which everything exists. Fire is the transformative property. Because you remember, anything it gets transformed, it requires energy. And that's what is indicated by fire. So, you can't just say just these 5 things alone. It's what these 5 things represent. And people have actually spent a lot of time trying to say, okay, maybe there's a 6th thing. But there isn't. If you look at the world around you, anything that you find, you'll be able to place in one of these 5 categories when you fully and properly understand them. Right? But let me take you through this methodology, and then we'll come back and see if there are any doubts. So first thing that happens is that these subtle elements or tan matras are created. Space, air, fire, water, earth, in that sequence. Okay? Then, now we are going into more detail. Okay? So then, the sattva part of the space. Okay? Again, we are saying sattva now because we said sattva is the mind aspect. जो mind hai, gyan indriyan are all sattva. So mind is the thing that comprehends, which has consciousness, or which reflects consciousness. Similarly, we have what's called subtle indriya or subtle organs. जैसे हमारी आंख है, the आंख that you can see is a gross organ. But the signals from this eye, when they reach the mind, they go to an area of the mind which is called the subtle eye. So whenever in Vedanta you'll see indriya, they mean the subtle indriya. unless they specify. So when we say ज्ञान इंद्रियां, हमारी 5 ज्ञान इंद्रियां हैं, sight, taste, smell, all these, feeling, touch, right? Speech. So speech is of course a karam indri. Sorry. So these gyan indriya are all subtle, and they are also objects of perception. So they are also sattva. So the 5 gyan indriya and the mind is all sattva. So the theory is that the sattva element of space creates the ear, because space is associated with sound. You'll see, you'll actually, as you get more and more, you'll now see the connections. Very often they say that the first thing that happened in this world is Om, the sound of Om, right? There's a big, this sound Om, and the sound itself has been given a lot of importance in our Indian uh, way of doing thinking, and they say that was the first thing that happened. They say on creation, first it started with the sound Om, and Om and space are related. Rather, hearing and space are related. So it is the subtle element of space that creates our subtle ear. Our subtle ear is built with the subtle element of space. That's what it's trying to say. Not the gross one, the subtle one. Then the subtle element of skin, touch, is built with the subtle element of air, vayu. Okay? No, I'm just taking you through this. I don't expect you to remember or anything. I can give you a chart so you can see it if you're interested. But I just want you to be aware of this, because this is our culture, right? You'll see this a lot in because this is sort of how we look at creation. Then the subtle element of sight is the subtle indriya of sight is coming from the subtle element of fire. You can understand, aankh or fire. Similarly, tongue, taste, is coming from water. The subtle element of water, jal, is what makes the subtle indriya in our mind of the taste. And prithvi creates smell. And there is actually a description about all this, which I haven't really fully gone into, on why this is so. Like, for example, they say that smell jo hoti hai, it comes from molecules. That's how we smell. And these molecules are actually earth molecules. They are the kinds of molecules. They're shaped in ways which are found in solids and earth and all that. So there's suna hoga earthy smell and things like that. So there is some logic to it which I don't fully follow. But Swami Dayanand says there is. So I said, okay, there is. Okay. So these are the 5, what's called the Gyanendriya. So what have we got so far? We've got so far that Maya, Avyakta, has 3 aspects. Always Maya has 3 aspects, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, which bring different properties to Maya. When creation starts, so-called creation, because Brahma is never created nor destroyed, then first we have subtle space, which forms subtle air, which forms subtle fire, which forms subtle water, which forms subtle earth. Space, air, fire, water, earth. Right? This we got all at the subtle level. Abhi kuch dikh nahi raha hai, kuch nahi hai. This is all subtle. At the same time, since Sattva, Rajas, Tamas goes through all of these subtle things, because it's part of Maya, it continues. The subtle aspect of space forms the organ of hearing, the subtle ear. The subtle aspect of air forms the subtle touch, skin, subtle element, the hearing touch, right? This is तरह से हमने बताया था कि these are the 5 things which are formed. They are sattva, all of them, because it's the subtle sattva aspect of each of these which forms. Because these are Gyanendriya. They perceive. The Gyanendriya क्या करती हैं? They perceive things. So they require consciousness to perceive. That's why they're sattva. And the mind is the sattva aspect of all the five together. That's called the mind. Because mind is a superset of all of these indriya. Mind perceives everything and more. So that's the first thing. Okay. Is this becoming too much?
No, it's
नहीं नहीं
okay.
ठीक है
It's okay.
Okay.
ठीक है.
हाँ. अभी काफी हो रहा
But
है. That's what I'm saying. हाँ. What do you
but
say, Sanjay?
one clarification to be made कि जैसे these uh, they only have the sattva element or they have all the three
No,
gunas
the Gyan Indriya have the sattva element
only.
only. But for example, now we were talking about space, right? We said the sattva element of space forms the ear.
Mm.
The rajas element of space forms the speech, the organ of speech. The rajas elements of these five tanmatras form the organs of action. Organs of action क्या है? Speech, uh, you know, moving with your feet, that's organ of action. Hands, grasping that activity, doing things with your hands. Locomotion, action, hands is different. So feet is locomotion, hands is like grasping and so on. Then evacuation, that's a organ of action. And procreation, reproduction, that's an organ of action. So these are our five organs of action. These five organs of actions come from the five subtle elements, but the rajas part, because rajas is the one which is all about action. Whereas the elements of जो ज्ञान इंद्रिय जिसे कहते हैं, which is the perception के जो organs हैं, eyes, ears and all, they come from the sattva part because they are about perception. They are not about motion. They are about cognizance, understanding, perceiving. They require consciousness, and sattva is the one that reflects consciousness. Rajas does not reflect consciousness. So the idea is कि जो पांच तन matras हैं, the five subtle elements, they form everything at the subtle level. They form the subtle world. Now, the next step here, and that's the last one, and then we'll be done with it, actually. The next part is that these, from the subtle universe, the subtle world which we cannot see, which we have been describing so far, which underlies the physical world, from them the physical world is formed. And physical world is all about forms and shapes, right? It's inertia. You can see it. It's gross. It's not subtle. It's gross. Mota, inertia. So what of the three sattva, rajas, tamas is that? What of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, is shape and form and inertia and all that is tamas, right?
Tamas.
Right.
From the tamas part.
From the tamas part. So this whole physical world is formed from the tamas part. And they have a process called panchakarma, or it's called pancha. I may be screwing up the words. In English, it's called grossification. So panchakriya or panchakarma or something like that. So what they do is, let's say, now how do we go from this subtle space to the space that we all see around, or we perceive around us? Or how do we go from subtle vayu to actual air which we can feel, or from subtle fire to actual fire that we can see, or from subtle earth to actual earth that we see around us, right? All the trees and plants and all the materials is all earth. So that process is called grossification.
I think it's called Panchkosha.
No, Panchkosha are the five cases.
Different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Panchkosha is the, your Ananda.
Layers,
and
five layers.
That's different.
Okay.
I think it's called Panchikarma is what it's called, right? So the reason for this, how this happens is, they say that, let's say we have to make fire. So there is already now in existence, there is all the subtle fire is there. So you take half quantity is subtle fire, and the balance 4 you take 1/4 each. That means 1/2 of subtle fire, 1/8 of subtle space, 1/8 of subtle air, 1/8 of subtle water, 1/8 of subtle prithvi. These combined together form the gross fire. That's why it's called Panchakarma, because all the 5 elements are involved. So the subtle fire is just pure fire. There's nothing else to it. It's only fire. But the gross fire is 50% fire, 50% subtle fire, and the rest 50% is equally divided into the other 4 subtle elements. And again, there's a reason for this. You can actually see that, because in gross world, you will see this mishran. There is a little of everything. So let's not get into too much detail into that, but just to understand, that's what Panchakarma means. That's what grossification means. So that's how this world, the gross world that we see around us, is created. It's the last step in creation, which is Panchakarma. And then that gross world, it combines and recombines, and you have different things and different objects and elements and all of that. But all that I'm describing, Panchakarma, creation of the Rajas, action, organs of action, creation of the Sattvic organs of Gyanendriya, organs of perception, all of this is changes in the Maya. What is not changing is Brahman. The same Brahman, there's just one, that Brahman is always there, regardless of whether the change which is happening outside is at what stage, regardless of whether the world is full of only subtle objects right now, subtle elements, or whether it is fully manifested. When it's partially manifested, it's all subtle. When it's fully manifested, then it's subtle and gross. Subtle part of the world we can't see. Gross we can see. But regardless of any of this, the Brahman is always there. That has not changed. Okay. So did you follow that by and large?
By and
There's more
large.
which I can tell you, but I don't think you need to know. This is good enough for now. You don't have to remember all
Yeah,
the...
but this is amazing. How can fire be formed? How can water be a part of the fire? Like you said, all the elements become fire.
So the subtle water, 1/8 of it is fire. I mean, and there's a meaning to this, and I don't actually know. I haven't studied it in detail enough. But you will probably find, that what they're thinking is behind it. Why is water part of fire? Because it is. As is earth, because maybe fire flows like water. Fire has things in it which are solid, which are burning, which is the earth part, which is and it's not that the gross earth or gross water is part of fire. You got to remember that. It's the subtle water and the subtle earth,
okay.
right? Not the gross one.
Yeah.
The gross fire is made by a combination of subtle fire, 50%, and all the other subtle elements, 1/8 each, 12.5% each. Then when you get out of all of them is the gross fire.
But ये
But
तो
any
मुश्किल
idea
है
how
ना?
these figures
Gross.
were reached?
Sorry, Sanjay, kya?
Any idea how these figures were reached? 50%.
I don't know. They're all given in the Upanishads and all that,
Yeah.
and in the
There
Vedas.
has to be some logical thinking behind that.
Oh yeah,
How
I'm
they
100% sure.
Sure.
I'm sure there's logical thinking behind it. But remember, it's a prakriya. So
Hmm.
why I say that is because every philosophy has slight differences in this. They're all along the same lines, the Indian philosophies, but they are a little different. Sankhya has 8 elements. They have other intermediate products which Sankhya talks about, which Vedanta doesn't talk about. And others. So all this again, it's all mithya, right? It's all name and form. What Swami Dayanand was mentioning in his book when he was describing this, he was saying the thing to remember is that it sort of tries to explain how this whole world came about. But it's also saying another thing, which is the most important thing, which is that all along this process, Brahman is always there. It's the same Brahman, the same substance, which is the adhisthana, which is the foundation or the substance or the कहते हैं the ashraya, the thing on which everything rests. That never changes. So it's trying to say how everything starts from Brahman, ends in Brahman. And it's all the processes from avyakta to vyakta to avyakta. The details of the process, yes, they may differ from philosophy to philosophy a little bit. And, and I'm sure Vedant has complete logic for why they're saying it. I mean, I don't understand it, but knowing this philosophy now, I know that they don't say anything which doesn't have a lot of logic behind it. So, yeah. The other thing you got to remember, it also says is why we say that we can worship God in anything. We can worship God in a stone because it is God. It is Ishwar. It is not even a stone. Is not even something which Ishwar became a stone. Ishwar is appearing as a stone. Is nothing. There's no like in our way of thinking, in our philosophy, there is a complete and direct connection. You can see that in the Srishti Prakriya. That it is a manifestation of Maya, which Maya and Brahman together is what's called Ishwar. It is a manifestation of the lower Prakriti of Ishwar, which is this stone. So you can worship anything you want. You have full freedom and right to call anything Ishwar because it is Ishwar. You can even worship yourself as Ishwar. No problem. You're also Ishwar. So it's showing this connection, a complete direct connection not on the Brahman level. Brahman to hai, there's a connection. On the physical level, it's showing a direct connection between everything around us and Ishwar. Or what we define as Ishwar, what we call Ishwar. Right? And what is Ishwar for us? Brahman plus Maya is Ishwar. The lower Prakriti of Brahman, you could say, is Maya, which is where Ishwar resides. Jiva also. All the Vyavaharika things, everything we think about, transactional world, is all the lower Prakriti of Brahman. And the higher Prakriti being just pure Brahman. The Paramarthika Drishti of Brahman. Lower Prakriti being Vyavaharika Drishti of Brahman. And there's also, by the way, we won't go into it, but all of these, like your mind, there's a mind, right? And the organs of action, everything that we described, the mind has 4 components: buddhi, manas, chitta, and ahamkar. We've talked about this in the past. They are just the different aspects of the same mind. Each of those 4, each of the organs of action, each of the organs of perception, they all have a devta. Okay, that devta is a. So, for example, I made a note here. The devta of the manas is the Chandrama, is the moon. So Chandra Devta is the presiding deity of the mind, the manas aspect, which is emotional. वो कहते हैं ना moon,
Mhm.
all the emotions are all are connected with the moon. Buddhi, presiding devta is Suraj, Surya. Buddhi is the tejas, where you have clarity, where you can see things. The presiding devta of ahamkar is Rudra. Rudra is Shivji. So जो अहंकार होता है ना हमारा, my me feeling, उनका presiding devta है शिव जी. And the presiding devta of Chitta, which is our memory, is Vasudev, Vishnu. So there are devtas for all of them. And it doesn't mean that, that Chandrama is the devta. But they are trying to say that because everything is God, everything flows from God, they're also trying to say that there's a hierarchy in the conscious, in the God thing too, because these devtas, so to say, report into another devta, and with those devtas report into Ishwar. They built a structure around it, and each one has got their responsibilities or things to do. The whole the you can say it is very silly, but the idea is not this. The idea is to say that there are forces in play which are outside your control. Everything is being organized and affected at a level which is higher than just the jiva, and that understanding we need to have. So in our way of thinking, we always say there are three influences. There is adhyatmic, which is me. There is adi bhautik, which is this universe, and adi devam, adi deva, which is the devtas or the Ishwar, the hierarchy of devtas and Ishwar. And when we say Shanti, 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 we are talking about one each time. We are saying, may God take care of me from an adhyatmic level. That means I can be my own enemy, so protect me from myself. From an adhibhautic level, that means my interpersonal things with other people around me and this world, how I relate to the world, give me wisdom there. And from an adhidaivam level, where I have no control. An earthquake can happen sitting here. Fires and floods can happen. I have no control. That is the world which is being organized by Ishwar and the Devtas. And each thing in this world has a particular Devta who's controlling it. Swamiji used to say there is a thyroid Devta. All the thyroids are being controlled by thyroid Devta. There's a sight Devta. There's a throat Devta. It's just to show that you can't control everything. And so that's why Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We talked about it last time too. So a very core part of our philosophy is this Adi Devam, Adi Bhautika, and Adhyatmik, which means Adi Atmik is called Adhyatmik. That means me. So where were they going with this? Yeah, so I was just saying and this Adi Devam part, we don't really know much about. We don't study that so much. It's all this Devtas. That's what is meant by Adi Devam. So there's order in this world. We say Ishwar runs it. There are laws, there are orders, and this is just to kind of try to say all that. So it's very interesting, if you approach it the right way, and not try to poo-poo it and say, oh, this is nonsense, and try to understand what is actually being said behind all this, then it makes sense. It kind of gets you in the right frame of mind. Gets you in the right frame of mind to study Vedanta, to understand what Vedanta is saying, to give you some stillness and peace in your mind, so that you can you can dig deeper into yourself. The whole purpose is this. All of this is being done to give stillness to your mind, so that you're not distracted by ये क्यों हुआ, ऐसे क्यों हुआ, मेरे साथ ये क्यों हुआ, why did I have to face the earthquake and you didn't have to do it, or things like that. Get away from all that. Get some peace. Understand that the world is fine. It's being run, it's being managed. There's a whole system which is managing the world. You now relax and try to understand yourself. Everything about Vedanta, in I'm sorry to a little diversion, but it's so interesting. In Brahma Sutra, which is the text of Vedanta, the fourth sutra is about Samanvaya. They say, what is the Samanvaya of Vedanta? What is the central idea, the central theme of not just Vedanta, of all the Vedas, everything that we've got? And they say that the central theme is the appreciation of Brahman, understanding that there is something called Brahman, which we cannot see. That means understanding me, Atma. I cannot see it. I have never seen it. I can't touch it. There is no way to reach it. None of my Gyanindriya or Karamindriya or my mind even can take me there. Everything is pointed outside. I can't go there. Getting you that perception, that feel of Brahman, that understanding of Brahman and conviction that there is that Brahman, that is the central teaching of all our Vedas. So everything that you see ultimately points there. And Swami Paramarthananda says, he says, you go to a politician जब वोट होते हैं ना इलेक्शन टाइम, सो कितनी लंबी लंबी स्पीचेस देते हैं, 2-2 घंटे 1-1 घंटा स्पीच देते हैं. क्या कहते हैं? ये करना चाहिए, यहाँ पे ये नहीं हो रहा, ये तुम्हारा मुद्दा कोई देख नहीं रहा, वो एकदम बेकार आदमी है जो मेरा ओपोनेंट है, तुमको तो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट चाहिए, तुमको ये करना चाहिए, वो करना. What is the samanvay of all that? They're saying all that, but behind that, the samanvay, at the end of the day, what they're saying is vote for me. I'm the guy you should vote for. Everything ultimately points down to vote for me, I'll solve your problem. So just vote for me. So कितनी भी बातें कर रहे हैं, they will talk about a diversity of issues, but the samanvay is vote for me. Same thing about Vedas you have to understand. We will talk about a diversity of things. You can get lost in the Vedas. But the samanvay is, there is Brahman. Know that Brahman. That is the samanvay. I mean, isn't it beautiful? Like, I found it very, very interesting. Anyway, so that was today's. It's quite technical. We'll as we go along, we'll refer back to it. But so any questions? Anything?
I have a question which is not related to what we studied today.
Doesn't matter.
I don't know. Like, what happens when we die? See, when we are living, we are breathing, blood is flowing, and everything is, the whole body is functioning, the physiological functions are going on. How are these going on? What is controlling these? And when we die, all these, how we die, all these functions stop. Breathing stops, heart stops pumping, blood पता नहीं क्या होता है, and the muscle and everything, it's all dead.
Yep.
All in just a moment, it just finishes. And now, what happens to, now it is just a body. It just decomposes if left just like that. And then what happens to the awareness or consciousness which is all pervading, which is part of us also, and the Srishti and everything around us also. Now, where does that consciousness go?
So that's actually a wonderful question, and it's totally related to what we talked about. You may be surprised. And I will be very honest with you, okay? There are 3 ways in which this question can be answered, depending upon your understanding and your level and what will give
Yeah.
you satisfaction. It depends on you. Okay? One way is the scientific way. What happens, whatever matter created consciousness, the mind created consciousness, the mind stops, the energy stops, the mechanism stops, we become part of the earth, consciousness goes, everything stops to exist as far as we are concerned. We cease.
Where does the consciousness go?
Yeah, so there's a scientific answer, and I don't even want to go there. So forget the scientific
Yeah.
answer because you know that as much as I do. Okay. Now there are the other two other Vedantic answers. One Vedantic answer is what we talked about just now. So that is the Vedantic explanation about the subtle body and the Adidevas. All the things you're saying, eyes can see. What's behind that sight? Behind the sight of the eyes is the Devata of the eyes. Behind the functioning of the Manas is the Devata of the mind. Manas has multiple components, right? And one of them is called Pranas in the subtle body. The subtle body has Pranas, the five Pranas. They are the five forces. So Vedanta has a very elaborate description of this, of how these things happen. So it is the Pranas which provide the energy for the organs to function. And our body is nothing but organs. When you say legs or feet, they're
Yeah, yeah.
basically organ of action. When you say hands and arms and all, they are organs of grasping. When you say eyes, they are organs of sight. So the body can be decomposed into organs. And each of these organs needs energy. The energy comes from pranas, and they need intelligence to perceive and to do things. That intelligence comes from the devatas, right? So when death occurs, what happens is that the pranas leave the body. The source of energy leaves the body. Because the subtle body, which is the pranas and the subtle organs, right? They leave the body. And all that remains is the gross sharir, which you see. On the surface, when somebody dies, you don't see any change. It's all the same. Yet there is a change. Something has gone. And the
Yeah,
something that has
something is
gone
gone.
is the subtle body that is left. Starting with the pranas, and they describe how the pranas first go, and then each of the devtas also go because that's the intelligence part. So devtas also leave from here. That subtle body goes, finds another suitable gross body, right? So that is the second level of answer, and I can give you more details, or I could refer you. You can study it more. Like the Brahma Sutras is full of this description. They describe the stages of this departure. They say that actually even they say not only the subtle body goes, a small, very small anu portion of the physical body also travels. It is so small, it's like a molecule, because that is the connection to the next physical body. Because the thing is that if you don't have that little physical
Yeah,
body, how will you get into the next physical body? What the subtle body is not directly cannot connect to a physical body. They're two different things. So a little part of the physical body also travels, which is what develops into the new physical body. That little anu develops into the new physical body. And it goes through stages. It says how that anu goes through. First, it goes to Swarg, which is just a description of a different place. Then it goes through clouds. Then it falls as water on the earth. Then it goes to the fathers as a seed. It becomes a sperm in the father. Then it goes to the mother. It becomes bigger in the mother. Then it comes out. So it's that little anu of your physical body also travels along with the subtle body. We just don't see it. It's so small. It's so little that we don't know. It's like a molecule. So it's so very, very small, very subtle portion. So they describe all this. They describe how the devtas, in fact, in detail, how the devtas go in. They travel from the organs, from the eyes and everything else. They travel to the center and then depart along with the pranas. So all this is described. And I would say this is the second level of answer, which is for someone who really wants to understand, ये कैसे हो रहा है, for them all this world is very real. This pumping of the blood is real. The Everything is real. You have to have an explanation for why and how this is happening. All the world you see is real, the bodies are real, the rebirth is real, the death is real. But there's a third level of answer, which is who dies. There is no death. This is all apparent. This is And that is a really, to really be sort of convinced about it, or say that is the answer that I'm seeking or whatever, requires a lot of conviction. So most people will not be satisfied with their answer. Like, who dies? Nobody dies. There is no death. So that's why Vedanta has this whole Vyavaharika thing. Why? Because it wants to give you an explanation or an understanding which will satisfy you where you are, till such time that you actually get to the core of Vedanta, which is there is no death. Until now that you know this, maybe when we die, let's see what our experience is. We'll see at that time what our experience is. Is this right or wrong? Anyway, I mean, those are the I can think of. I mean, everything in Vedanta you can say happens or can be answered in two levels: the Vyavaharika level, which is like 99% of the Vedantic text, and the Paramarthika level, which is that last 1%, which once you understand, you don't require the Vyavaharika. You don't require anything. These questions don't arise. I'm just giving you a very honest,
No,
if
that's
you
okay.
right, because I'm just telling you what I understand. Without regard to where you are, what you want to
Yeah, yeah,
understand. You know
yeah.
that, right? But I have so much faith
That,
and confidence and trust in you that I feel like I can say this.
no, that's
Honestly, I'm
okay.
not.
That's okay.
एक मुक्ता एक ये बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज होती है. When we die, these pranas, they don't leave the body at the same time. Different pranas leave the body at different times.
ये तो मेरे को
The
भी नहीं पता.
हाँ
It's very
the
technical, यार. Actually, yeah.
हाँ ये जो है वो एक एक्सप्लेनेशन वो दे रहे थे कि इवन व्हेन ए पर्सन इज डेड, एंड वो कई बार रख देते हैं, मॉर्चरी में रख देते हैं कि विल क्रिमेट द बॉडी आफ्टर 48 आवर्स और 72 आवर्स. तो जब जिस स्टेट में वो रखी होती है, एंड व्हेन दे ब्रिंग द बॉडी आउट फॉर क्रिमेशन, हेयर ग्रोथ हुई होती है उसमें.
Hmm?
हेयर ग्रोथ हुई होती है, जैसे बियर्ड उग जाती है.
Really?
Really?
या यस. तो
ये तो
वही वो
बहुत स्ट्रेंज सी
एक्सप्लेनेशन थी
बात
कि
है.
दैट पार्ट ऑफ द प्राणा हैज नॉट लेफ्ट द बॉडी.
Actually,
इट
that is true because death also. There are stages of death too.
या
There's like brain death, uh, some other clinical. I mean, like death also occurs in at some stage becomes irreversible, and you say it's dead.
हाँ.
But
तो इसके अंदर भी ना वो है सारे, इसके अंदर द प्राणास कितने कितने आवर्स के बाद दे लीव द बॉडी, और
पांच प्राण
कितने
होते हैं
टाइम
ना.
के हैं.
5 होते हैं ना प्राण.
पांच पांच
हाँ.
प्राणास. हाँ. ये इसका मैंने इनका पढ़ा था मैंने. सदगुरु का तो है एक वीडियो है जिसमें ही एक्सप्लेन्स हाउ दीज प्राणास लीव. And second very interesting thing I have noticed is in 2-3 cases where I have gone where the person was dying, and मेरे सामने he died, but I was still there, and his hand started shaking, his leg started shaking. So why does that happen? उसके अंदर ये सदगुरु ने एक्सप्लेनेशन दिया कि the soul is trying to re-enter the body. The soul is resisting to leave that body which the soul has been staying for such long time. It is trying to re-enter the body, and that's why those
Okay.
movements come. So ये चीज तो मैंने देखी हुई है.
Okay.
I mean, muscle twitching and all तो मैंने भी सुना है. Okay, you know,
हाँ
you don't
Very true.
require consciousness necessarily for muscles to twitch.
हम्म,
So that, or sometimes there's an expel, gases in the stomach get expelled. And it
हाँ
almost feels
that
like
is
a muscle.
different, that
Yeah,
gases वो तो ठीक है,
हाँ,
वो तो
वो भी होता है, हाँ. No, but
हाँ
you're right.
हाँ
Who knows what's going on here? That's why it's called
हाँ,
subtle, right?
who
We
knows?
can't see
At
it.
the subtle plane you never know.
They say that the only.
और फिर देखो हमारे हिंदूज में जो ये क्रिया करते हैं आफ्टर 13 days, तो उसका भी एक लॉजिक है that the soul remains within that confines
Within the vicinity.
around the relatives, it doesn't want to leave the relatives, तो उसकी जो जर्नी है, onward journey only starts after the 13th day.
That's true. Yeah, I've also
Hmm.
read about that. So there is the Karam Kanda of the Vedas describes all this. I mean, it's like tedious to read, but it describes all these uh, rituals and sort of the logic
Because
behind the rituals. Yeah. But Vedanta says that the purpose of all of this is to gain in maturity. All of Karam Kanda, all of these things that we do, all the rituals that we do, the purpose is to gain in maturity, to understand things, to steady your mind, steady, not study, steady, right? So that you can get to the real thing, which is understanding Brahman. Because an unsteady mind will not understand Brahman. So that's where as you can see, my energy is all there. but you're right. I mean, all this very good stuff. It's like good to know all these things because it's our like our culture, right? We've grown up in
yeah,
it
just
and we've seen it all around us, and now we can sort of try to make sense of it a little bit. At least to me. What do
नहीं,
you
अब
want to say?
थोड़ी तो चीजें समझ आ रही हैं, वो हो
Ah,
रहा है. It's helping us only to understand the basis of all the Indian philosophy and why people do it, why people do it so religiously and they're so much involved into it. अब थोड़ी बहुत समझ आ रही हैं.
but this
It's beneficial.
Mukta, this thing about Purushartha comes in here.
Hmm.
You know, if you are doing, if we do these rituals, remember what's the motivation? That we want our ancestors who've died to go to a good place. We want us to do the right thing so that हमको पाप चढ़े, पुण्य ना चढ़े. So that tomorrow God rewards us, not punishes us. The Purushartha is all about me and how I want to. It's all about I am separate from God. There is this force of God which gives me rewards, and I believe that the rewards of punya are even more important and longer lasting and better than rewards of just making money and all of that here. They're higher level rewards. That's what we are after. So all along this, that's why they say the Purushartha, you have to understand the ritual part of Vedas is called Dharma Shastra. Just like the end part of Vedanta का जो text है, it's called Brahma Sutra. The ritual part of Vedas, उनका जो text है ना, Jaimini ने लिखा है, it's called Purva Mimamsa. It's also called Dharma Sutra, not Dharma Shastra, Dharma Sutra. Just like the purpose of Brahma Sutra is to understand and reach Brahman, the purpose of the Dharma Sutra is to reach Dharma. Dharma is what? Doing the right thing so that you get longer lasting rewards, not just in this life, but in your next life, in your future life. So I'm just bringing this up to say that this clarity is very important. To know what we want, what are we after really, what's our real motivation. that will describe it, and there's nothing wrong in it. It'll just tell you what you should be doing. If your real motivation is dharma, that I want to do the right thing, I want to, the next life I want to be happy, that's a wonderful thing. And then you approach it from that perspective. You know, just saying.
Yeah.
That's the way. That's the way our religion is set up. It's beautiful.
बट उन दोनों
somebody
को
really thought
इंटीग्रेट
about
करना
it.
पड़ेगा ना.
Huh?
धर्म और ब्रह्मा को इंटीग्रेट करना पड़ेगा ना. You cannot bypass dharma to
Absolutely,
get
you
to
can't.
Brahma.
You cannot.
You can't.
100%. You can't. You can't, because the reason why you can't is because without dharma you will never have peace of mind. You'll never have the stability of mind, which will be interested in learning about Brahman. A person, try to imagine a person is not dharmic, running after money, running after lust and desires and this and that. What, I mean, that person will think it's a colossal waste of time to spend trying to, understand Brahma. Like, what are you talking about? I got better things to do. Why waste my time on this, right? That's why this dharma is so important. So the first sutra of Brahma Sutra is Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Atha is trying to say now. Atha Brahma Jigyasa. Atha is about now Brahma Jigyasa, and Atha is the qualification that you require to go after Brahma Jigyasa. And those are the, I've told you that the Chatushta Sampatti, Sadhana Sampatti, right? So if you're not dharmic, if you haven't sort of got some sort of a control over yourself, over your mind, if you don't have maturity of mind, forget about it. You may as well just follow your passion and do what you need to do. Time kya hai? We still have anything else? Any other question or points? Mukta, I can see
discussion हो गया.
Something is worrying in your head. Some.
नहीं ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. Actually, this was वो एक चीज होती है ना कि whenever you see some death in the family or some near one and you go to that cremation ground, तो वो एक अलग तरह के questions दिमाग में घूमने शुरू हो जाते हैं. So recently there was one such case, so I was there. तब से मेरे दिमाग में
Yeah,
ये
बिल्कुल
सब
बिल्कुल.
was going on in my mind. So I thought I'll ask when we have the next class, we can just talk about it. In fact, my younger daughter, जो son-in-law है, उसकी बुआ का बेटा, he just about 40 years old, died of डेंगू से शुरुआत हुई थी. पता नहीं डेंगू हुआ था, उसके बाद एक वीक के अंदर was no more. तो पता नहीं, बस it was a sad.
Of course, I mean, and totally unexpected, right?
Yeah.
Dengue can be really. I was reading about it recently. It can be really, if it is uncontrolled, it can lead to internal hemorrhage and all that, right, Sanjay?
Yeah.
कुछ उसका
Hemorrhagic
improvement हो रही थी.
type and can lead to multiple organ failure.
Multiple organ failure.
ऐसे ही उसका वो क्रिमेशन वगैरह दिखते हुए दिमाग में ये सब बातें आ रही.
Of course, बिल्कुल होता है यार. By the way, there is I mean, I don't know, I just want to tell you, there's a concept which Swamiji used to use. It's called Shamshan Vairagya. It's Shamshan Vairagya, which is, after you witness something like this, for some time at least, anybody can get Vairagya. You start thinking, "Ye kya hai?" Till such time that you then get, after some time, you get consumed back. But
you get, actually then you again get into the rut of your daily routine and everything. धीरे धीरे फिर भूल जाते हैं. बट जब भी जाओ वहां पे तो फिर ऐसे कुछ कुछ दिमाग
But
में आना
part of it
शुरू हो जाता है.
remains within us, you know. Part of
Yes.
it remains, and one day we kind of say, you know, now we better take understand this, spend time on this. बहुत हो गया.
और एक ज्ञानी आदमी ने मेरे को एक बार कहा था, इफ यू वांट टू रिमेन ग्राउंडेड एंड रियली बी विद रियलिटी, यू शुड कीप विजिटिंग द क्रिमेशन ग्राउंड. ये नहीं कोई कोई डेथ हुई तुम्हारी, तुम चले गए, वहां जाके अलग ही ख्याल, अलग ही माइंडसेट, अलग ही क्वेश्चंस राइज होते हैं. whenever you go to a cremation ground, कई कई ऐसे क्वेश्चंस दिमाग में आते हैं. एंड उसने कहा था कि अगर if you have to learn lessons, you keep visiting the cremation ground.
So that you're seeing every aspect of this.
Aspect, हाँ.
Yeah.
We become too detached from the
Too detached.
death aspect. No, we are not ready for it.
We don't want to think about it. We are
Think
not ready
about
for
it.
it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just want to avoid it.
Yeah.
Actually.
चलो.
So I brought the closing on a very sad note.
No, no.
नहीं, it's not a sad note. It's actually an eye-opening note, and we should all be in touch with the reality, with the ultimately तो सबने वहीं जाना ही है ना.
बिल्कुल.
Yeah, पर हम भूल जाते हैं ना.
well prepared for it.